All right, we wanted to take a closer look at a story today. It took us a little bit while to write it, of course, because there were some internet issues. Everyone's favorite web infrastructure provider, Cloudflare, had a massive global disruption that caused error 500 messages and took down major platforms, including X, Twitter, and ChatGPT, along with most other AI platforms. The outage, triggered by a sudden spike in unusual networking traffic, impacted thousands of websites early on Tuesday morning and highlighted the fragility of internet architecture. 20% of global web traffic flows directly through Cloudflare. The firm is actively investigating the root cause and working to restore full service while underscoring the need for greater resilience in digital infrastructure. And I think it's kind of funny that we've run into this problem recently, Al, where DNS update in AWS took down one half of the internet, and Cloudflare getting knocked offline by a massive traffic spike took out part of the rest of it this week. They're still attributing what exactly went on. We know that Cloudflare is going to give us a great postmortem when they figure out exactly what happened. But I want to turn it over to you and maybe ask, are we putting too many eggs in one basket by relying on Cloudflare to protect us? Because when Cloudflare goes down, we can't get anywhere.
So here's the thing. Cloudflare is very popular because it does a great job of a very specific task of delivering applications globally to your users in a way that gives them really good performance anywhere in the world. Cloudflare has built an amazing network to do this. And then let's put this in context. Although we've centralized everything on Cloudflare, we don't often see Cloudflare outages. We certainly don't often see Cloudflare outages of this scale. So yeah, the outage is extremely visible, the same way any of these centralization outages are extremely visible, but they're very rare. And so when you look at what is the impact on the total uptime of whatever system you're using, you'll still find that even with this particular failure or this type of failure, you're still getting higher availability and better performance for your users across the last year than you would have if you ran this yourself or you tried to do some equivalent of this. So yeah, centralization means it's very visible when things go wrong, but centralization means you can spend a lot of engineering on making sure they don't go wrong often. One of the things I've read on this, and it came across Reuters, is that the sort of triggering event here is an automatically generated config file that got too large and then caused a service to crash. This feels a little bit like what we saw with CrowdStrike, where a config file was deployed out, and that caused the massive outage for CrowdStrike. It seems like these config file changes need to run through a CI/CD pipeline to validate they're not going to cause problems. Yet we need to deploy them out fast.
You're the eternal optimist, Al, and that's what I love about you, because I took a slightly different tack from this, and it come courtesy of our friends at Down Detector. You know, the website that everybody goes to figure out when you're having problems with stuff. Oh, wait, I couldn't check that one either because it turns out it runs on Cloudflare. Yes, the world is better off because Cloudflare is front-ending sites and preventing massive DDoS attacks, and their engineering has done a really great job of helping us extend and expand the way that web works, and a lot of other things too. They are effectively the internet's proxy layer at this point. I mean, heck, they were able to rescue 1.1.1.1 from the trash heap of history because of bad configuration stuff. All that being said, you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket. And we've learned that from a lot of things. I mean, all you got to do is just look up the infographic from the XKCD of, the entire modern internet. And then there's a little thing down there, a little Jenga piece, and it's insert name there, AWS, Cloudflare, Nginx, whatever. What we're starting to see is that when these outages do happen, they happen at a level that is difficult to contain. And you mentioned CrowdStrike. We've talked about AWS before. There are a lot of challenges that happen when we've built something that is effectively too big to fail. And more than any other company, I think Cloudflare is pretty strict in the way that they deploy things and the way that they leverage stuff. I I can't fault them for this. How can you figure out, oh, the config file got too big? When do we test for that? How do we understand that? The problem is not the outage itself. It's the rolling effects from that outage. If, it went down for 10 minutes, everything that checks on Cloudflare kept pinging, it kept going offline. little things that you didn't think were reliant on that. I was having a meeting first thing this morning and went to go check the calendar on somebody's website. It's offline. It's hosted on Cloudflare. Like, oh, well, that's fascinating. And so you've got to figure out how to prevent this from happening. Yeah, in some cases, you probably do need to have your load balanced infrastructure running on it. But I don't know, maybe put your status page somewhere else. Host it somewhere that nobody goes, like Oracle Cloud.
So you're suggesting to avoid the problem that AWS had a long ago with outages when they had the big S3 outage, and the website at AWS that reports on the status of AWS services is dependent on the S3 service. Yes, circular dependencies like that are really problematic. But yeah, I still view using a well-engineered system that is designed to continue to operate at large scale absolutely is way better than any of the other solutions for this. So yeah, I'm still comfortable with putting our websites through Cloudflare, having even trivial things go through Cloudflare. But yeah, the tool that tells me whether things are working or not can't tell me if they're not working, if it's dependent on the thing that's not working. Yeah, mindful of circular dependencies. The other thing that strikes me on this is that there do seem to be a lot of circular dependencies that go through Cloudflare. Because what we didn't see is when the issue was resolved, everything miraculously started working again straight away. It took a little while for it to filter through the various layers that are dependent on Cloudflare before all of the layers caught up with one another. This eventually consistent systems that we usually see at internet scales. Would be interesting to see if you had centralized everything into a single place rather than having these eventually consistent distributed systems, whether the time to get back into operation would have been longer or shorter. Because, of course, in a centralized place, you have to replay everything in a single stream, whereas when you're doing eventually consistent, you're replaying in different locations and your total timeout might be lower.